This is the final result. A full room renovation all by myself. It was a massive project for a beginner like me. But with some help from some close ones, we pulled it off. You will see every detail, from renovating the walls to installing new electrical wiring. So sit back, get comfortable and enjoy watching this transformation unfold. This is the room as it is now. Empty, quiet and waiting for change. It's the space I'm about to transform into a great home office, with plenty of extra storage. A clean canvas, the perfect place to begin. Even though this is already my 8th video, it's actually one of the first projects I started filming. I just got delayed. A lot. Back then, I wasn't sure what I wanted this room to become, or how I was going to approach it. But one thing was clear from the start. This space needed storage. Lots of it. So that's where this build begins. It all begins with assembling a set of IKEA cabinets. Once the cabinets were assembled, I could install the doors. Looking back now, since I still had no real plan for this room, I probably should have chosen slightly smaller cabinets. But at the time, I simply didn't know yet what I wanted to create here. So that's why the next chapter is called Building Without a Plan. So I wanted to make the IKEA built-in closet hack, the one everyone seems to do on YouTube. So I built a base underneath the cabinets and added an extra side panel to create a clean built-in look. It makes the whole setup feel much more intentional and finished. But once I installed the wooden side panel and the base, I could start installing the side panel on the right side and the side panel on the left side, the one that will be a small dividing wall. The last step of this build was securing the frame to the wall and installing the drywall panels. I did not cut out the floor underneath, because this gives me the option to remove the wall in the future if I want to change something. And yes, what am I happy that I did not do that. Because when this part of this build was finished, I realized something. I could no longer place a ceiling light where it was supposed to be. The conclusion was simple: break it down and start over, but this time with a proper plan. After thinking about it for quite a while, I decided to remove the frame again, because by then I had made a new plan. I was going to build a lowered ceiling and add spotlights throughout the room. And of course, Plaster Guy was here to help me out and learn me more basics about electrical wiring. So this time we decided to start by installing ceiling battens across the entire room. In the meantime, I had gathered all the materials needed for the electrical rug, so we could later mark the exact positions for the ceiling spotlights. We also ran an extra power cable to the office area of the room. This way we would have an additional outlet later for a lamp or anything else we might need. Once all the wiring was in place, we replaced the original light with a switch dimmer. This would allow the spotlights to be dimmed, creating the perfect atmosphere in the room. But then this happened. Once the ceiling wiring was secured, we decided to replace another power outlet in the room. The one where the computer and all the other office equipment will be run through. During removing the old outlet, we immediately saw that the electricity came from the living room. This meant that if we drilled directly underneath, we could lower it, keeping this outlet out of sight in the future. While enlarging the opening, we had to work carefully. We didn't want to damage any of the power cables. And finally, once the new outlet was installed, we could permanently remove the old one. Now that the electricity was in place, it was time to start building again. In my small shed, I had prepared a frame, which I could install for the dividing wall again. This time I left a gap between the cabinet and the wall, a space that will be used as extra storage. To be specific, it was for a treadmill I had recently bought. The treadmill I added is an extra upgrade for this little office, ensuring I always get enough movement on my editing and office days. As you can see, I had already built a small door here, so the treadmill can stay neatly out of sight. The next step of this build was installing a new windowsill along the entire length of the room, which also doubles as a heating cover. I started by removing the old windowsill. Next, I cut the top panel to size and installed 2 side beams against the wall for extra support. To minimize cold air getting inside, I filled in all the small gaps with sealant. I also pre-assembled a frame around the heating pipes, so they would be no longer visible. If uneven edges appear, I would sand them down later on this build. Ideally, everything would have been perfectly cut to size, but somehow I didn't have that level of skill here. Now back to the partition wall and ceiling. By this time I had already collected some building materials, like these drywall panels. Next, I cut these drywall panels to size using a utility knife. While installing the first ceiling panels, I realized once again how much easier it would have been to work with a proper plan. Ideally, I would have installed those panels above the cabinet section as well, but it is what it is now. Fortunately, my girlfriend was kind enough to help me, so I didn't have to handle all the panels alone. The first 2 had already been a real struggle. After that, I had to continue on my own for a while. Instead of installing the ceiling baseboards, I decided to tape off the floor and already start to prime the walls with plaster primer. Because yes, I'm going to properly plaster this room as well. I'm not a professional plasterer, but after doing it several times, I can already see I have improved a lot. I'm very slow. Where a professional might finish a whole room, I might only manage one wall. But hey, progress is progress, right? In the next session, where my girlfriend had some time again, we continued working on the ceiling. I had already cut the panels to size myself, so the installation process went pretty smoothly. Once all the ceiling panels were in place, I could add some extra screws myself and drill the big holes for the spotlight. Next, it was time to fill the seams on the ceiling. I ended up doing this 100 times for my feeling. I think I made a mistake using mesh on this type of drywall. I'm not entirely sure it was necessary. But once the seams of the ceiling were finished, I could move on to plastering the walls again. I started with a small wall that would become the office space. My sister, who also enjoys building, came to help. She had never plastered before, and she was excited to try this for the first time. And I don't mind that my house is a test location for her. We just had a good time together. During this session, we were able to plaster almost the entire room, except for the dividing wall with the treadmill behind it. I'm not a fan of plastering alone. I have noticed I can be too slow and the plaster dries too quickly. Working together usually makes the process much smoother for me. We also finished the edge on the ceiling where the curtain rails will be installed later. Then it was time to smooth out the rest of the ceiling using my sanding machine. This job turned out to be quite a workout for my shoulders. And when I checked the ceiling after sanding, I wasn't satisfied with the result. So I went over it all again. Next, it was time to finish the dividing wall. Knowing it would be the last plastering session was a relief. The floor in this room was already a complete mess and I wanted to have a clean room where we could normally walk again. Once the final wall was plastered, I could finally start painting. I began with the ceiling, and even here I had to apply several coats. After that, I could install the spotlights. Installing them gives me a feeling that I'm almost getting there. I fill in the small gaps between the ceiling and the wall. I filled those gaps with caulk. Once the plaster was fully cured, I could start sanding the walls, removing the last small imperfections. Next, it was time to prime the wall again, so I could start applying the first coat of base paint. A freshly plastered wall absorbed a lot of paint. In the end, I gave the wall 3 coats of primer and a sealer before applying the final color, which you will see later in this video. During painting, it was sometimes hard to see the white paint on the freshly plastered wall. But if you look closely, you can definitely see that I'm putting on some paint on there. Next, it was time to fix the small storage door, because that big opening I had created really didn't make any sense. It was the ugliest part of the room. The plan for this not so well thought out part of this build was simple. First, I removed the door. Then I cut a new piece of wood to the size and attach it to the top section. Finally, I shorted the door and painted it white to match the rest. And this was the end result. Perfect? Not really, but for now I'm happy with it. Okay, now back to the heating cover. First I finished the newly installed outlet. Then the new wood arrived and I could cut everything to size for the heating cover. For this build I had to cut a ventilation grill, because of course I want the air to flow through the room so it still heats up properly when the radiator is on. I also made a cutout for the cabinet that I will be installing here, partly underneath and inside the cover-up. I also decided to paint the cover in the shed first. This saved me from working in an awkward position later and from having to tape everything off again. Once I somehow managed to get the cover upstairs, it was time to start assembling again. And as you can probably guess by now, it didn't fit perfectly the first time. I had to sand a little of the cover off to make everything line up just right. When it finally sat in place, I filled the small gaps with wood filler. The cover was already pretty secure, since all the pieces fit tightly and held each other in position. But a bit of extra wood glue certainly didn't hurt to make everything even more solid. Now that the whole heating cover-up was strong and set in place, I could make a cutout at the top of the windowsill. Here I installed another ventilation strip, allowing air to flow freely along the radiator. When the framing of the windowsill was done, I could focus on the wall cabinets. These cabinets are meant to hide the ugly radiator pipes once and for all. I started by installing 2 sturdy beams to hang the cabinets later on. But installing those cabinets on my own was a little bit too tricky, so I switched my focus back to the desktop that I bought. This desktop could go up and down, so I could walk and work with my new treadmill at the same time. This IKEA desktop was really easy to assemble. Then I put together a simple drawer cabinet, also from IKEA. It's not the most beautiful piece on its own, but once it's installed inside the windowsill, it should look great, at least that's the plan. Then my sister arrived once again, helping me hanging the cabinets on the beams I had installed earlier. I didn't attach the cabinets directly to the wall, because I wanted to leave a small gap for an LED light strip, adding a bit of atmosphere to the space. The LED strip is mounted on a corner profile that we attached on the back of the cabinets. Once the cabinets were finally in place, the new outlet will be installed. From this power point, the LED light can be connected later on. The last part we worked on together was hanging the cabinet doors. And even though it's not completely finished yet, the room already has a completely different vibe. To enhance the vibe of the room even more, I decided to hang a small painting, a memory from a trip my girlfriend and I took. The screws to hang the painting on are securely anchored into the wooden beams running behind the wall. Meanwhile, we also installed some wooden structures around the hanging cabinets. These will be used to attach the cover, making it look as if the cabinets are completely recessed into the wall. I'm going to build this cover out of MDF. I used some leftover MDF boards for this cover. With my saw, I cut everything neatly to size so it could be properly installed later on. While mounting these wooden panels, I was frustrated that it didn't have a nail gun like any other DIYs on YouTube have. This meant that the screws will always be visible. I tried to solve this by countersink the screws into the wood and filling them later on with the wood filler. To be honest, this is easily said than done. The final piece of wood that had to be placed on the window side was a bit trickier. I needed to make a square cutout. Like a proper DIYer, I first wrote the measurements on a piece of scrap wood and worked it out in my small shed. And after another day of building, I had made some new serious progress. When the recessed cabinets were finished, I started building the cabinet that will go under the second desktop. Yes, you heard me right, the second desktop. This small cabinet will be a perfect place to hide some of the electrical setup, like a Wi-Fi extender or the power cables for the printer and computer. Normally I will build a cabinet like this in my shed, but for some reason I got stubborn and decided to assemble it in the most uncomfortable spot of the house, right in the corner where it will be placed. I also got a bit too enthusiastic and installed the second desktop way too early. This action of mine made things quite tricky later when it came to painting the small storage cabinet. After installing the second desktop, I decided to put up a roller blind. To be honest, I think it looks really ugly. I probably should have hung some regular curtains, but it is what it is. With the roller curtains in place, I enlarged a hole for the power cables. After that, I installed the baseboards under the two small cabinets beneath the desk. Then it was time to move the desk once again and start the sanding and painting steps for all the built-in I had made. I sand down the last imperfections first, and I made the wood filler spots flat with the rest of the wood. The goal is to make everything look like one solid piece of wood. Then the painting. I started to prime the wood white, but I can already tell you that the final coat will also be white. While painting the little cabinet under desk number 2, I was questioning my decisions once again. I regretted not having painted everything beforehand, so I would not have to fit in those awkward spots again. Still, despite working in those tight, awkward spaces, the end result turned out great, if you ask me. Then there was the long white wall. Because this room isn't very wide, I couldn't really place any more furniture against it. So I thought maybe I will hang some paintings or artwork. But then I found this piece of paint. It adds a concrete-like texture to the entire wall. The idea now is that the whole wall becomes something special, one large piece of art itself. The internet told me that the best result would come from applying several layers of paint in a cross pattern. So that's exactly what I did. And honestly, what did you think of this paint? I'm really pleased with how the paint turned out. It gives the room just that little bit of extra character, without items that will be getting in the way or anything. The next step was finishing the radiator enclosure. I hoped that a single coat of paint would be enough, but it quickly became clear it wasn't. So I sanded it down and decided to sand the soffit in the corner, the enclosure of the hanging cabinet, and from the large wardrobe as well. I also sanded the tall narrow door that hides the treadmill. Once everything was sanded down, I could finally apply the last coat of paint. This paint is specially formulated for MDF, giving a clean and refined finish. You can literally feel the difference in strength between the Electiral and the base layer that was on it before. The small hand-built cabinet underneath the second desk gets included as well. Once everything had received its final coat of paint, I could finally move on installing the baseboards. I had already cut them to size earlier. All that was left was to secure the paint in place. Attaching baseboards to a brick wall is always a hassle. I see Americans on YouTube just nailing them in with a nail gun, but that simply doesn't work here. And when I use construction adhesive, I sometimes need to hold the baseboards in place for up to I don't know for how many hours. And with these two stands, everything went perfectly. Then it was finally time to bring in the new computer setup. I bought a large monitor so I can edit my videos properly from now on. I also invested in a Mac Mini M4. My old laptop has reached the end of its life. And the Mac Mini offers far more power for editing my footage smoothly, at a much better price than most MacBooks. And to keep the setup completely wireless, I picked up a matching mouse and keyboard as well. And the second to last step of this build was sealing all the corners and seams. And after spending a few hours doing caulking, I can tell you one thing. Getting it perfectly neat is a craft on its own. Respect to anyone who has truly mastered the skill. And once all the baseboards were secured, the long narrow door suddenly wouldn't close anymore. I knew this was going to happen. To fix it, I first marked the exact spot where I needed to create a notch, and then carefully cut it out with my jigsaw. After touching up the paint, it fits perfectly. I hope you enjoyed watching this build, because now it's time to look at the final results.